let us rest for a moment on the question, what does, and we don't need to agree yet on who is to blame for the crisis, but there certainly is some form of crisis. What does this mean for funders? I represent one myself, but I'll shut up for now. What does it mean for responsibility in Blue Orchard, the operational deficiencies you've seen? We have the joy of meeting rather regularly, as we are in lenders groups who are dealing with MFIs that are slightly financially stretched, given certain asset quality problems. So what does it mean that someone like Milford challenges the idea of microfinance, and that we see in the implementation that certainly there have been faults and mistakes? What is your reaction? How do you deal with it? How do you look going forward? Possibly we'll start with Christian, so you can also justify why he's producing chocolate.
Okay. Is that working? Yeah, okay. Thank you. Well, thank you much, Elvira, and Mary. Thank you to the MFC for inviting us again and for setting up this very interesting panel. I think it's probably one of the more interesting panel compositions that I've seen in the recent past. Well, when I saw the title of the opening panel for the very first time, I really asked myself, is microfinance really here at a new start? Do we really have to reinvent microfinance? And therefore I asked myself also, did microfinance really fail over the last 2 or 3 or 5 years? And my clear answer is no, absolutely no. Globally, I believe microfinance is not at a turning point and has also not to be reinvented, because simply microfinance is still very young and on a development path, very clearly for us. That's the position that we have. Now, crises, economic cycles, and the appearance of bubbles were always part of the development of the financial system. This shouldn't be really a surprise if you take a step back that those things happen. And questioning the value of microfinance at this point in time, I think, is probably as inappropriate as questioning mortgage business in the US post subprime crisis. So that, I think, should be a strong message here to start with. If we then look at some evidence from a fund manager, probably Maria Teresa is going to confirm that to some extent. Let's see. If you want to look for evidence for failure, I want to show you a few numbers, or have a few different views here on microfinance institutions, on fund performance, as well as on funds investors' behavior during this crisis time perhaps. And I'm going to start with MFIs. As you might know, we are managing, I can speak for both perhaps there, both institutions, we are managing a pool of loans or equity positions towards microfinance institutions. In our case, we are covering about 250 MFIs, quite an amount of MFIs globally, 60 countries, so we have a very nice insight of the industry, more or less real time on a monthly basis, and really see what's going on. And I want to just give you a very few aggregate numbers across the board on a global basis. And I'm not going to bore you with numbers here, but we really see that microfinance, of course, contracted during the financial crisis quite moderately, is back on a growth path, and in 2010 we have seen that combined GLP of MFIs in our portfolios, they grew again by 25%, so they are back on growth. If it comes to portfolio quality, and I make it simple there, we could now look at par and refinance loans and write-offs and so on, but to make it very simple, we have today a combined aggregated write-off level of those MFIs of still below 2% just after after the significant financial crisis. So 98% of debt is still repaid. That is for me very, very solid. So why should we talk at all about over-indebtedness and about the crisis? I'm overdoing things here a little bit, I know, but let's stand things there for the moment. Well, okay, let's look now at the fund level. So just think about, we are a fund manager, we have a fund, and we have many assets in this fund, i.e. loans to MFIs and so on. So if you look at that level, even during the financial crisis, we had never showed a negative annual return to investors, while all the asset classes have shown minus 30% or whatever. And if you take the provisioning level within the fund, by luck there or by chance, again, you're going to find a number of about around 2 or 3% of the fund, which can serve as a proxy for the expected potential losses that we have in our funds. 2-3%, well, expected loss, it's not written off. Is that solid? Well, I believe yes. And a step further up again, look at the investors we are having. As you might know, Responsibility has pretty stable investors, many retail and private banking investors, that they are also a bit mission-minded. They are not just looking at a flat return or an absolute return here. And they again, during the financial crisis, no counter-cyclical, no cyclical behavior there. We had very, very strong inflows of these private investors during the financial crisis, and the inflows were so strong because we couldn't also, at the end of the day, invest all these funds. We had to close, or we had to come to the decision to close our funds for about half year in 2010 because we were just sitting on piles of cash. At the cash level of about 30%, we decided to close the funds for fresh money. That meant, at the same time, we had even to intensify our investment activities. So I think that's the picture. These numbers for me are very solid. It's a robust industry, and MFI today is clearly validated by one of the biggest financial crises probably in the world. Well, yes?
Can we turn to Maria-Theresa, or you're not yet finished, sorry?
We have 10 minutes, or shall we?
How about if we turn back to you later on and give Maria-Theresa another chance?
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I have to say it's a pleasure to be here, and I'd like to say it's a pleasure to meet Milford, because clearly you have been attracting a lot of attention in the industry. I'd like to make a few points on the comments that you made, since Christian has really covered the industry of fund management. I'd like to talk about the paradigms that you have raised. And I sort of noted down while you were presenting a few things. One, for example, that I find very interesting is the scale-up message that you gave in your speech. And it just reminded me how in the past, especially when I started, actually was a lot of scale down was really, downscaling as opposed to upscaling. And I think it's, again, I don't think it's a paradigm. I think actually microfinance, you have both sides of the coin. The other kind of paradigm is micro versus SME. If you look at the networks in particular that do microfinance today, we have a number that are really working very much with banks, and they have a significant part of their portfolio in SME. If we look, for example, at the Blue Orchard portfolio per se, approximately 140 clients, 40% of these clients are actually banks. So again, the question is really how, is it really micro versus SME? Is it a missing middle, or is it really more phases of different, kind of a child growing up? And what can we learn going from one phase to the other, which I think is very important. It comes to my mind the fact that, for example, ProCredit, decided to step out of the micro sector, let's say the Euro 2000 and less loan amount. And in the industry, there were voices that they're going out of microfinance. My perspective on this was just really to see where there is more need of financing as opposed to, shying away from microfinance. Another paradigm, I think, it's production versus trade. Clearly, this is very important. I think in the region that is represented here in Eastern Europe, Central Asia. But having actually had the opportunity to live there, I think both, again, are not, one is not better than the other. Both are very, very much needed. In terms of, another comment I'd like to make is regarding commercialization. Again, you sort of, I guess, made a statement that commercialization has been a disaster for microfinance. I personally disagree. I think, and I believe that part of the integration of microfinance in the financial sector has been really sort of challenging the microfinance, but in a positive manner. And I have to say I'm very pleased to see the the move of credit growth in banking and let's say more traditional microfinance sector, and that they move together. I think that's a very clear signal of integration of microfinance in the financial sector, and also, of a certain path to commercialization. The fact that microfinance is, I think, correlated, if this has been a main question for all the investors during the financial crisis, and I think, yes, we realize that it is indeed correlated. And also, I think, you referred to Andhra Pradesh, that you're probably looking at, so it'll be very interesting to have your feedback on that. You referred to Bosnia. I guess another country that I like to refer to in that context is Nicaragua. Again, there, we had a major, let's say, workout situation with the bank. So in fact, I guess from there you could say that until it was a microfinance institution, actually everything went well. When it became a bank, suddenly there was a big failure in let's say, in the long-term sustainability. So my general comment is, when I hear the word disaster, I always feel a bit uncomfortable. Because I feel that there are certain nuances that are really indeed very important to make let's say, the discourse of microfinance and possibly a critique a bit more, yes, nuanced and multifaceted, really.